The typical consumer these days are not the same consumers of the past. They want a dental practice that's going to listen to their needs. It's going to cater to their preferences and meet them with an exceptional experience.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Raving Patients Podcast. As you know, I'm your host, Dr. Len Tao, and I want to thank the sponsors, both Dental Intelligence and the doc sites, for their support, allowing me to come to your inbox every single Friday at 5 a.m. Eastern Time. My guest is Daniela Skeen, also called Danny, from Atlas Dental Solutions. So we're going to be talking about how to create a great patient experience, which I'm all about. So Danny, thank you so much for joining me today. For those that don't know who you are, tell people what you do and how you help practices.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, I just wanted to thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I'm honored and thrilled to be here. I'm so passionate about this topic. I know you are as well, because I really believe that implementing customer service and providing exceptional experiences moves the needle in your practice in terms of sales and also profitability. So what I do specifically is I work with dentists and teams, and not only do I help them implement systems and processes, which is very easy. That's the easy part. But what I really do is I really help them with their communications, sales, and customer service. That's my jam. And I love working with people. I only work with dentists locally. Like, I don't do it nationwide. I know that's why I work with Anissa. So if there's a dentist that says, hey, listen, I'm from Michigan and I want to work with you, then I would recommend working with a consultant that helps them nationwide. And so that's why we're connected, because I like to go into the practice. I want to be in the trenches with them. I want to feel the energy, because I believe and feel that I can help them best when I'm there versus, virtually, which we do virtual calls as well. But specifically when I'm in the dental practice and we're having that interconnection, that synergy, that's what I live for. And that's what they enjoy as well.
Thank you for clarifying that. So as you mentioned, and I agree, having this great patient experience, I actually call it, you have to create a wow experience. I've been talking about wow experiences since I've been speaking since 2010. So I'm all about the customer experience, making sure they feel like they want to come to the dentist, so they show up. We want to make them love coming. We want to make them feel important. We want to make sure that you roll the red carpet down, so they feel like I feel when I fly American. When I fly American Airlines, they treat me like I'm a VIP because I fly so much. You want to treat all your patients like that. So can you talk about, and maybe you have some stories you can tell as well, the power of providing exceptional customer service in the dental space? Why do we need to do this? And I know the answer is yes, it increased sales, but can you dive a little bit deeper into that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's so important that we talk about it. The reason that we need to provide exceptional experiences for our patients is because the typical consumer these days are not the same consumers of the past. They're resourceful. They're selective, they're tech savvy, and they expect convenience. They're different. They tell us what they want. They're telling us their needs. That's why there's surveys that are done. That's why there's data that shows what the typical consumer or patient wants. They're not scared to tell you. That's why Google reviews are such a huge thing, right? And so most importantly, it's important because they want a dental practice that's going to listen to their needs. It's going to cater to their preferences and and meet them with an exceptional experience. They value personal relationships, trust, transparency, and communication. So really, they're all interconnected. They're really all interconnected. You really can't have one without the other, right? So it's like, for example, I oftentimes talk to dentists when it comes to working out, if you want to lose weight, right? We all know that if you want to lose weight, you can go to the gym, and that's one way that you can lose weight. However, if you want to maximize your results, you're going to also adjust your nutrition, cut your calories back so that you can get optimal results. And so that's what we want to do when it comes to providing an exceptional experience for our patients. And there's a lot of ways that we can do that. We can do that by enhancing our communication skills. I think there's a popular statistic that tells us that 93% of communication is nonverbal. So that means that most people or patients, consumers are paying more attention to your body gestures, your facial expressions, and your body position than the words that are coming out of your mouth. So that's the nonverbal aspect of communication, right? And oftentimes, people are saying, "Oh, well, I can't control what my face does." But I have to respectfully disagree. We can control if we learn how to. If we work with someone that can teach us, if we practice, then we can learn how to control, so to speak, our facial expressions. And so I think it's important that if we understand that aspect, just that one thing, communication, just that one thing, let's just talk about that one thing. That alone is going to make our patients feel that we care for them. Because bottom line, what do patients want? They want to feel seen, heard, and understood. And we're not going to be able to make them feel that way if we can't communicate properly. It doesn't matter if you have the best dental practice, if you spend $1 million and you have a brand new dental practice and you have all these beautiful people in it and the best techniques and you went to all of these elite universities. That's not going to matter if you can't even get down the fundamental basics of communication, because that's what they want.
Yeah, I think that's great. You know, one of the things I teach is I teach art of the sale. That's what my class is called. So I talk in that class, I talk about how you just mentioned, actually 93% of communication is, they look at is nonverbal. And I study an Albert Mehrabian's model of communication, where it's a combination of those 93%. Because it's nonverbal, you have to work on your nods, your smiles, and your eye movements. And all of those things can change the way someone is perceiving you. So that all goes into it. It's very much a nonverbal communication that we don't work on. We're so attuned to presenting treatment, but we don't focus on the nonverbal stuff. So I agree with you 100,000,000% there. So let's talk about the role that customer service plays in a successful practice. And I want to share with you a first impression that I got from a practice. So my wife recently had some plastic surgery done, and we went into it. We did a number of consults. Obviously, I have some knowledge about the space, and we went into one particular one. At the woman's name was on this little sign at the front desk, and it said Director of First Impressions, which I thought was a great way to kind of push yourself into the position of, hey, you're going to meet me first. I'm going to make sure you have this great first impression. And we chose that doctor. So I think customer service plays a huge role in a successful practice. So can you discuss that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll share an experience with you, what negative impact not having customer experience can have on a patient. And so I have heartburn. I suffer with heartburn, unfortunately.
Join the club. I have heartburn too.
Okay, there we go. So there you go. That's what we share in common. And so I have this gastro doctor, and he's phenomenal. Let me tell you something. He sits and he talks with me. He really takes his time and discusses all of my medical treatment, asks me all the questions. But unfortunately, the rest of the staff, they're busy. They're busy, and I totally understand. And so I went into the dental, or not the dental practice. I'm sorry. I went into his gastro practice because he had phenomenal reviews, and I was like, I want to see this doctor. And as soon as I walked in, nobody greeted me. There was what are those windows? The sliding doors. You had to sign in, right? The reception area was just cold and grimy, and there was not even water. There was just nothing. There wasn't even a piece of art on the wall, right? And so immediately I felt not important. I felt that the office lacked personality. I felt that, there's a possibility that these reviews are not accurate. There's a possibility that this doctor is not exceptional. But since they had such great reviews, I was like, let me just give him a try. And so I went and saw him, and he was fantastic. And so I continued to see him. But that first impression that I had just going into the practice really could have made me walk right out. And it happens more often than not. at dental practices. It happens more often than not when someone comes into the dental practice and the reception is too busy because they're checking someone out. They're on the phone getting an insurance breakdown. They don't even acknowledge the patient's presence, right? The office is crimmy and cold, and, the doctor doesn't put any, effort in the brand, so to speak, right? And it doesn't always have to be anything crazy. Like you said, your experience at the plastic surgeon's office. What is a little sign going to cost off Amazon that says director of first impressions? What, $10? So it's just thinking outside the box a little bit and finding other ways that we can add personality and a uniqueness to our brand, to our dental practice. And by doing those things, you will see how it affects your patients and how it elevates their experience. And there's so many different ways we can do that. Specifically, I like to talk about using signage and murals and arts and, using props and furniture. And it doesn't always have to be elaborate and expensive. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. But I think that that's so powerful because when we can recognize that if not only by communication, but by also elevating our dental practice, maybe, repainting the walls and, doing little things in addition to communication, that will make your patient feel more comfortable because you already know they're going into the dental practice. They're fearful. They don't like going to the dentist. How many studies are people hate going to the dentist? I hate to say that, but it's, kind of the truth. So we want to try to do as much as we can to make those guards come down, to make them comfortable. And we don't always have to break the bank to do that. We don't always have to break the bank to do that. And the dividends will come back. I am more than certain that they will come back. And you know this. You've been doing this. This is also what you talk about as well.
Yeah, I on the same note I mentioned before, my wife had surgery done and we went into like I said, a couple of practices, and one of them I actually posted in my Facebook group called Raving Patients. And it was a picture of the sliding door. So they had a slider at the front desk. There's a sign that says, "Do not touch the glass if it's closed." It looks like they hadn't updated anything in a very long time. It didn't give the best first impression. And I posted a picture of it. All these people were commenting that it looked like, a clinic, and it wasn't. It was actually a high-end office. They just didn't give the right first impression. So, I think that plays a huge role. What I always recommend practices do is pretend you're a patient. Walk into the front door of your practice and see what it looks like to someone who isn't biased like you. See if you're going to give off the right vibe. Don't put, and I know we're going to talk about some of the outside the box items to do when you're trying to, change things. But, in this case, it did not give the best first impression, versus the one that had, much better. It was beautiful inside. You have to really put yourself in the patient's feet and see what they think about yourself. So I think, again, you're spot on there. So I know we talked about some, communication skills, how everything is, only 7% verbal. Everything else is based on our body behaviors or body languages and stuff. So can you talk about how learning to communicate effectively can increase sales and as well as the patient experience? So what do you specifically, or how do you teach someone to communicate effectively? I'm going to start off by saying one thing, and it's not even communication. It's listening. Listening is so important. If you don't listen, you can't communicate. And I think we as dental practitioners just don't listen well to our patients. And people who listen to my podcast religiously know I'm very upfront and honest. I thought I was a great listener. And I hired a coach when I bought my practice, and she told me I sucked at listening. And I literally took a class. I got coached on how to be a better listener. And I was all about active listening, and I have become an amazing listener. And I joke around by saying that the only person I don't listen to is my wife. I have very selective hearing with her. But I think listening is a major part of communication that is so overlooked. So I'm curious your perspective on this.
Okay. Well, I'm in total agreement with you. My approach is, I'm sure similar as yours, is the PPP. So what does that mean? People first, professionalism, and patience. So the patience part is where we need to learn how to listen actively. And so, I actually read, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by, Stephen Covey. And he actually talks about in his book that there's tons of communication, webinars, conferences, conventions, but no one is taught how to listen actively. And he role plays, because I also have his audio book as well. He role plays in his audiobook. I mean, he's brilliant. And I encourage anyone who's listening, if you haven't read the book, please get the book. And if you have access to Audible or, Hoopla or any of the resources, download the updated version of his book. And there's a whole entire chapter, seek first to understand. And he's brilliant. And, that's where the patience comes in. He talks a lot about how, we don't want to get into our autobiography, lecturing, educating. And the thing is, some dentists love to talk. Some dentists love educating. I love educating. I get it. Like, I totally get it. But we have to learn how to exercise self-control. And that's where the people first attitude comes in. It's about them. It's not about us at all. Right. And so between the people first attitude, serving them, trying to understand them, probing, asking the right questions, exercising self-control through patience and listening, right? And then the professionalism, that's another component, right? Like, how many dentists have bad bedside manner? They don't do that. They're just like, I'm everything, and I'm the best of the best. And I think that's great. And I think that it's important to have confidence, but there's a fine line between confidence and overstepping into being egotistical. And that's where the lack of professionalism is going to come across. And that is a huge turnoff to patients. You will be surprised. Patients, you can present to them a $50,000 or $75,000 treatment plan. But if there's that bad bedside manner and the lack of professionalism, they don't care. They won't go with it. They won't go with it.
You're 100% right. I made a commitment when I bought my practice in 2007 to provide the greatest customer service anyway, because I wanted to stand out. And I knew that my dentistry didn't necessarily make me stand out, but the customer service that I was going to provide did. So I did things like I went with patients that were all surgery consults and surgeries to be there when they woke up to adjust their denture. I gave everybody my cell phone number. I had something called a please handle me with care form, and basically a menu of services that we provide from a customer service. Do you want Tylenol? Do you want Advil? Do you want Motrin? Do you want what type of music do you want us to play? We offer paraffin for the hands. I did things that made me different, and that was my brand. And I got patients to say, yes, I was a very good dentist, but patients didn't necessarily know that. They knew that I provided this amazing customer service. And that's how I grew my practice, organically. So, I think that this is a very overlooked part of the puzzle. And if you don't do these things, you're definitely going to be, struggling. I always ask patients or practices when I discuss this with them, how do they differentiate themselves from their competitors? And I don't say anything. And I've started to say some things because they give me the wrong answer. They go, oh, I have a CEREC machine. I have an in-house lab. That's not what I'm talking about. How do you differentiate yourself from a customer service perspective? They don't understand that because they're so focused on the dentistry. So I really think that's a really important thing to get out there. So that's all, again, you're spot on with your answer there.
I mean, I could understand, I understand why some dentists don't look at it in that view because, they're analytical typically, right? They're technical. They're thinking of the technicality, or excuse me, what's the proper version? The technicality, me. There yep. You go. And the intricacies of working inside the mouth. There's like a science to it. Right? So that part of the brain is very different than the other side of the part of the brain where it's more empathetic and it listens more and it's more communicative towards patients. And so, when we can bring both of them together, now we can produce magic. Now we can really stand out and provide remarkable experience for our patients. And that's what our goal is. And that's what you do. That's what I do. And there's a lot of other coaches and consultants that do that as well. We want to infuse them together. Because I can understand why dentists are like that. I worked with one associate and he was, the best associate. He did great crowns. For like 3 or 4 years, that's like, wow, you're doing great work. But he did lack very much the empathy, the listening, the communicative side. But he was such a great dentist and he really did care about his patients. Like he took longer in the mouth than necessary. I was like, maybe let's cut it a little short because, we're going to scare them away.
I agree with you there.
We don't want to go too crazy, right?
No, you do not. You do not. So let's talk about some out of the box things that you can do to help gain and retain patients for life.
Okay. So we kind of highlighted a little bit earlier. I think that branding is important, or not. I know branding is important. It's something that you talk about, everyone talks about, in terms of marketing. And what's often overlooked is signage, right? Is, beautifying your existing dental practice, whether it's a mural or an art, or whether you get an outside, illuminated sign. There are different approaches that you can take to really make your mark to stand out. And so because I work also at a signage company, there's actually very inexpensive ways that you can do that. Like you can hire a designer on Fiverr or on Thumbtack, anywhere these days that can create your brand or your logo or maybe some artful work. And then you can send that to a signage shop, and then they can print it on a vinyl, and then you can get it installed very economical, right? But what is that going to tell patients? What is it going to, communicate to them? It's going to communicate that you care, that you value their loyalty. It's going to communicate that you value yourself and your brand. And so that's something that is oftentimes overlooked because again, we don't always, we're not taught that, or dentists aren't taught that. And not a lot of dentists aren't into branding or marketing, or they don't want to do it, or they think it's a lot of work, or it's too expensive. But just by doing that one thing, adding signage, it could be either outside or inside the office or little baby signs. You could really make a difference. And I'm not sure, I wish I could show, I know I can't show anything on here, like a slide, but I went to a wedding up in Orlando, Winter Park, Florida. And I went to, I think, a steakhouse with some of my friends before the night before the wedding. And as soon as I walked out, I saw this dental practice, and he had a wall mural. He had a sign, but not only that, I looked inside his dental practice, and he had like a custom little painting of a little tooth. He had a little sign that said, "Follow me on Instagram, Dr. Dapper Dental." Just all these little things, that really elevated his brand and made him stand out. And so, you might not want to go that route. That's okay. There's another, pediatric dentist that he has a basketball court. I mean, let's talk about, we can go crazy too, in his, pediatric office. And he does that so that all the babies or the young children come in and feel comfortable. And he uses signage to his advantage. He has games. He has all these different little things that he brings into his practice to really make the patients feel comfortable. And he just opened the dental practice. And then there's another dental. There's so many. I'm sure you've heard of the dental bar, right?
Yep.
But you don't have to go that route either. You could if you wanted to, but you don't have to. They literally put a bar, a non-alcoholic beverage bar, into their dental practice, which was brilliant. Right? So those are just things that we can do. And it doesn't always have to be crazy. Like they went, they're two younger dentists, so they probably went all out. They're going to be doing this, 20, 30 years. I get that. But if we're, thinking, we're going to be working for the next 5 to 10 years or maybe 15 years, we can still beautify our practice and think outside the box by adding different elements of signage. And that's a great way. That's the way that I like to introduce it, because it really does leave the mark. And I'm going to post something later too. I drive. The first thing I do is I look at signage. I can't help it. Now I can't help it because it's just what I do. Right. So I'm driving, and I saw a sign that illuminated. It was massive. It said Mint. I'm trying to think. I think they're a DSO, but it said Mint Dental, right? And it illuminated. And then I kept driving home. So I took a picture of it. Then I kept driving home. And then I saw another illuminated sign, and it just said dentist. That was it. Just dentist. And so I haven't posted it yet, but basically I was like, let's put the two together. And if you were a consumer or a patient, what office would you go to?
Yep. 100%. I think there's a big deal in signs, and especially if you don't have great great views or a great location, you need signage to get people to come in. I think that's even more important. You got to put a lot of thought into the signage to attract people. If you don't have that great location on a busy intersection or something like you would like.
I want to add one more thing, just one more thing for anyone who's listening and who is thinking of, if you don't already have a practice, if you're looking to get a practice, it's really important to look at the regulations of the building. And the reason I say that is because, depending on the state and the city, sometimes they do have regulations on signage. Like you're not always allowed to do whatever you want. So that's really important. And the reason I say that is because there was a friend of mine who she had graphics on the outside of her, she had a beauty salon, but she had a basic sign that said like beauty. And then I texted her and I said, like, what happened? Like, where's the disconnect? And she's like, oh, well, I didn't look into it before. So before you secure your lease, you need to make sure that you're looking at the limitations on signage and branding. Sometimes they don't allow you to do whatever you want. You have to use their colors, their codes, their fonts. And that's the last thing you want to do if you are trying to be different.
100%.
That's just a tip for anyone who doesn't have a practice already.
That's why in South Florida, a lot where we live, I see a lot of the signs that just say dentist. They don't have, it doesn't say a practice name or anything. So it's interesting that you brought that out. So I'm curious, we covered a lot of information. Is there anything else that you would like to cover before we switch to my fun section, which is the lightning round Q&A?
Yes. We kind of already talked about this, but I just want to really bring the point home on communication and active listening. When it comes to our patients, we want to make sure that we're keeping clinical terminology out of conversation or to a minimum. We want to make things as simple as possible for our patients to understand. That's the way we're going to help them get to the yes. So I know that, it's talked about often, but I just want to remind everyone of that very simple yet profound thing. We don't want to be, all super extra and telling them about all these things. We just want to keep it very simple for them to understand so that they can get treatment done. And listen. And a tip is, if you are having a hard time listening, then assign someone in your dental practice to be the listening, what do I call it? Like the listening...
The ear, your ear.
Yeah, like the listening ear. And, and they're going to tap you, if you go over a certain amount of time with the patients, or if you're talking too much, or if you're over talking, or if you're interrupting them, right? They're there to kind of wave you down. And you'll be surprised and incentivize them too. Like give them, a little, $1 or whatever, figure out a way, right? Like there's a million different ways you can incentivize them. And that's one way that's super easy. You don't always have to get a coach. But that's so important.
So let's switch over to the lightning round. You were great. We'll get your contact information in just a couple of minutes, and let's go over the lightning round questions. We'll get through 8 to 10 of these. Again, rule of thumb is answer them as quickly as you can. You don't need to go into long drawn out answers. It's lightning round for a reason. First one, if you could take a class to learn anything you want, what would it be?
How to open a nonprofit organization.
Who has been your greatest inspiration?
Beside God, I would say I love Tony Robbins, Stephen Covey, and Dale Carnegie.
What do you enjoy most about being your own boss? What's hardest about it?
I love the flexibility and the freedom to do what I want when I want. And the hardest job is keeping myself accountable.
Has anybody in your network been important for your dental journey?
Yes, so many. Oh my goodness. My husband, God, I would say Anissa Holmes, Sophia, I can't remember her last name, but she's the practice navigator. She's a consultant. She's been a mentor to me. Dr. Mark Gilbert, Dr. Sharon Gilbert, they've been mentors to me. So many different people.
Perfect. Describe Mondays in one word.
Insanity. Mondays are my busiest days.
Okay. What do you wish you had known when you first started out?
I wish I had known that I didn't have to have everything together. It's okay to be a learner, to be a beginner. You don't have to have it all figured out. Get the right people in your corner to help you grow.
You got assigned one of the toughest questions here. So I'm going to read this one to you, but it's a tough question. If you had to open up a lemonade stand tomorrow, what would you name the stand?
That is a tough one. I would name the stand Lenny's Lemonade.
Lenny's Lemonade. Nice. What have you given up on that you had never wished you had?
Owning a dental practice.
Interesting. Okay. How do you know when you have the right idea?
When I mastermind and everyone tells me it's a brilliant idea.
What habits have helped make you successful?
Grit.
Last question, and this could be either personal or business. What is one subscription you cannot live without?
I wouldn't call it a subscription, but it's Hoopla. I do audiobooks.
Audiobooks and Hoopla. Okay. So Danny, how can people reach out to you if they're in South Florida, especially? How can they find out more about how you can help them, or they want to contact you?
Yes, absolutely. So you can reach out to me on Facebook, Daniela Skeen. You can reach out to me on Instagram. It's also Daniela_Skeen, or you can email me directly at DanielaRskeen@gmail.com. And, I actually am in the middle of a rebrand, so I don't have my website up and running. It's still going to be about 2 to 3 months, but for now, you can reach out to me in those ways, and I'd get back to you usually with same day or within 24 hours.
And did you want to offer an opportunity for people to reach out to you and offer them something?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge person about, helping support others. So if you need help or just strategizing or just, need some training with your team, then I'm offering a 45-minute coaching session. So we can always jump on a 15-minute consultation. And if there's just one thing that you need and I could provide it for you, I'll offer it for free for 45 minutes.
Perfect. This was great. Loved our conversation regarding patient experience. It's one of my passions. So it was really good to talk to someone who else is passionate about it.
Yeah, me too.
Guys, if this episode resonated with you, please reach out to Danny. If you have a friend or colleague that you think could get educated by what we talked about, please share it. Please review us. Please like us. Please subscribe. Again, we come out Fridays at 5 a.m. every single week. I've been doing this for a long time, 7 seasons almost. So it's become a big passion of mine as well. I want to thank both the Doc Sites and Dental Intelligence for their support as always. And as I end every single one of my podcasts, remember, your reputation matters. Danny, thanks so much for joining me today, and we'll talk to everyone soon.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.